If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We're going to talk today about, I figured what's going on right now is a lot of us, it's in the holiday season coming up. We're here. It's that time. And I feel like we need to talk about probably some guidance and some health stuff that we can do to keep ourselves healthy and to really connect with our personal growth. And I think that a lot of times when we have a lot of responsibilities and there's a lot of things that are going on, we have a tendency of overlooking that. We have a tendency of not doing that. And I think let's talk about that today, because I think if anything, we need to connect back with ourselves and we need to kind of denoise the things. I feel like there's so much noise and so many things going on right now on this planet. It's just so much all at one time. It's like, how do we put things in perspective? How do we do it all the time? And how do we do it sometimes during the time of year that seems to be a lot going on, a lot of things happening, a lot of responsibilities on top of the other responsibilities that you have, all those things. And so let's talk about that today, because I think that we need to get aware of what we can do to protect ourselves, get aware of what we can do to bypass some of the pain that we might be dealing with or some of the struggles that we might be having, and also be able to eliminate some of the negativity or problems in our life that we might be dealing with, but we just don't know how to deal with it. I'm so glad to be back on the air today. And, I've been thinking about the concept of, when we get overwhelmed, and I think that there's a lot of folks out there that get overwhelmed, and I think we get overwhelmed, especially during this time of the year, because I think a lot of us are living in the future thinking. We have a tendency of doing that future thinking of, what's going to happen, how is my life going to change, the future thinking, and it really keeps us kicking the can down the road, right? We're constantly thinking about what's going to happen and the plans that we have, and once that comes around, then I can begin to live. I've been looking for this for so long. I've been looking toward this. I've been looking for this experience or this day, and it's like all of a sudden we can actually begin to live. And I understand where that happens is sometimes we're in so much stress and anxiety that we're constantly kicking the can down the road, hoping to feel that way or to get to that experience that we've been waiting for. And a lot of times when we do this, and I don't know about you, but a lot of times when we do this, I always feel like it's kind of a letdown, because what we've been dealing with is that we haven't really been living in the moment or experiencing it, and what we were hoping to experience is not at the level that we thought it was going to be, because we've been making it out to be something big this whole time. I also think that a lot of us have a tendency of living in the past with memories, and memories are great, but I feel that, again, it takes us off target. It also might put us in a state of mind that might not be joy-filled, right? Because we might be living in that past situation, that past memory, and having maybe fear or resentment, and then having maybe fear that it's going to come back around this time around. And I find that it's interesting, because I feel like we put so much stock into various days of the year. I always think that that's a funny human thing to do, is that we put stock in our birthdays, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that we shouldn't love our birthdays, but we put stock on the birthdays. We put stock on lots of different things that maybe are cool to put stock into, but we don't need to be looking toward that or future thinking into that. And I think we do that quite often. I also think it's interesting, too, that I feel that many of us, because of the responsibility level, I feel that that's a huge thing that we end up needing to look at being mindful. And I think the mindfulness situation, and I don't know if you've actually experienced the mindfulness situation, but I feel like when we actually are able to be mindful, and that takes skill, right? Because that's what Buddhist monks do. Buddhist monks work on this mindfulness concept of eliminating all thought, right? And it takes a long time, and it's interesting once you finally do eliminate all thought, all of a sudden your brain is telling you that there's a problem because you're not thinking. So it's a very interesting dynamic. However, when we begin to work on that mindfulness, we're able to be in that moment actually feel what that moment's like. And it's nice when you're able to do that. And it can be really challenging. So many of you might be experiencing some stress or anxiety or dealing with some pain or drama at work or home, what have you. And it can be hard to get into that mindfulness state because you're in a sense of panic, you're in a state of fear, whatever that is. And so in order to begin to get there, we have to start eliminating some of the stressors in our life and some of the things that are not adding to our quality of life. And I'm obviously not advocating everybody to go out and quit their job tomorrow or anything like that. But what I'm saying is we need to actually be aware of what is causing us stress. And I know that lately, many of you out there are probably empathic in nature, and some of you might be highly sensitive people as well. And being a highly sensitive person is a skill. It's a gift, right? It's not something to be mocked. It's not something to be made fun of. It's a true gift. And many people that are highly sensitive are also very empathic. You're able to feel for other people. You're able to have that connection, which is so powerful. But that in and of itself has to be managed. Okay. One of the things that I find often is that when people are empathic and sensitive, they can be empathic and sensitive sometimes to the wrong things. And what I mean by that is that you can open yourself up to be a target, or you can open yourself up to things, people, and situations, and you have these feelings and you care about them, right? You care about them. In the process, you care about the people, but you might be feeling for them. You might be feeling to them and being empathic to them to a level that they are not even aware of, to a level that they're not even aware of in their own self. And let me give you a good example of that. And I don't want to turn this into narcissism 101 today, but I know a lot of y'all we do like to talk about narcissism. But when somebody is a true narcissist, right, they have very little empathy, if any. The idea of caring about other people is really non-existent. And it's interesting because in that process, we as empaths, we as highly sensitive people, HSP, right? Okay, when you are around people like that, you kind of feel like you feel at their core. You feel them for who they are. Below the mask and underneath all the mask and the covers. But the problem is they're not acting from that place. So you're giving them more than you need to give them. Okay. And I know that some of you are dealing with the holiday season and you're going to have to be hanging out with some family members or some folks that you really just don't get along with. Okay, if they weren't your family, you sure the heck wouldn't be hanging out with them on Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever holiday you choose to celebrate. And it's interesting because a lot of times when an empath or a highly sensitive person is around someone like this, it can really suck their energy, right? And so there's a lot of things that we can do to begin to see this. And that's why I don't want to do a holiday-specific show, because this is stuff that we have to do all the time. Okay, but specifically, a lot of times during this time of year, there's a tendency of maybe spending time with people that you don't spend time a lot with because you don't have a lot in common, or because they're not very healthy for you to be around. And so I'm just trying to equip you in today's show with some guidance and some support that you can have when you're going through this process. So if when you're in a touchy situation or a stressful conversation, think back to the show and say, "Hey, I got Ashley here. Well, what should I be doing? What can I do to safeguard myself? What can I do to get through this process, unscathed?" And also being actually mindful and actually having something to look back at and enjoy the fact that you were there to some degree, right? We don't have to be in pain and suffering when we're dealing with these folks, and we do not have to allow these people to hurt us or ruin our lives. And so this is a big deal. So one of the things that I want us to realize here, and I'm reminding myself, when I talk about these things, it's not just, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that. It actually reminds herself of these things too, right? We have a tendency of forgetting some of this stuff. And it's interesting. I've realized, though, that when you're dealing with folks that aren't very empathic, okay, so they don't have to be a narcissist. There's other people that don't really care, right? And they don't have that feeling for other people, and they're not very sensitive to other people's feelings or needs. When you're dealing with that, one of the things that I think is a really good concept and idea is to be aware of sharing any sort of dreams or aspirations with them. And I'm not asking you to keep your life quiet and not talk about the good things in your life, but quite honestly, I guess to a degree, is that it's nice to be supported by people that support you, right? And so you have to really look into, who really does support me? Who is really on my side? Who's in my corner, right? Who's my cheerleader? Who am I the cheerleader for? Whose corners am I in? And really support yourself with that. But I feel that sometimes, especially too during the holidays, we can get kind of sentimental, and we can kind of look back at some memories or what have you, and that can also cause us to talk about things or make choices that might not be to the best of our ability, might not be to the highest level of good. And because there's going to be people in your life that really you can cherish, you can talk with, you can have these great conversations with, and there's some people that you really just probably should not. Because I'm trying to make sure that we all kind of come into the situation, experience the situation, and feel good about the experience that we have, feel good about what we're offering, and feel good about leaving and not feeling empty or drained. One of the things, too, is that I've realized that a lot of times during the year, during the days, during the months, and especially during the season, there's a lot of things going on the news. There's a lot of things going on around the world. And that can be overwhelming, too, because we can have a tendency of deflecting into really focusing on those things that we really don't have the ability to change. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't pay attention to things that matter to us and try to work or try to help or bring awareness to things like that. But at the same point, we need to realize how many things are we prepared to bring awareness to, and how many things do we actually have time to do those types of things at the same time of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our mental mindset, right? What our thoughts are. And regulating our thoughts is so interesting, because when you start being aware of your thoughts and you start connecting with your thoughts and you start being aware of what's in your head, and realizing that your head is basically creating these thoughts, your mind is creating these thoughts, and understanding where these thoughts are coming from. When we start feeling down, or we start feeling depressed, or we start feeling angry, or we start feeling sad, all those things are very interesting. They don't just come out of the blue. They come out from some sort of trigger, whether it's a thought in our head, whether it's something that someone else says. Possibly it could be the news is on and you start feeling a certain way based on a situation that's taking place. And so we have to be super, super aware of what we have going in and out of our headset, as far as what we're watching, what we're viewing, what we're listening to, and also, who are we around, the people we're around. We need to be aware of that as well. And then also understanding, how do we feel when we're around certain people? I mean, there's certain people that you might feel great around. And I want you to start analyzing that. The people that really seem to lift you up and you feel great around. You know what I'm saying? I want you to start analyzing that. Who are those people? Start taking note of that. Because if you don't know that, there's a tendency of maybe hanging out with some people or spending time with some people that you might not know, but they're actually bringing you down, making you feel bad, taking away from your energy level. And this takes sheer awareness, right? This takes sheer awareness. We just need to be aware of the people we're hanging out with and how we feel about them. How do we feel about ourselves when we're around them? When we leave, how do we feel? Do we feel happy? Do we feel lighter? Or do we feel completely drained? It might not be that extreme. It could be very subtle, right? And the subtleties are the things that I really want you to look at, because things that are subtle are the things that we need to understand. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about how to be aware of the energy of those around us, how to know when it's time to get going. There's a time to get going on some of these events, activities, and holiday dinners and lunches and all that stuff. When is it time? We're going to talk about all that, so stay tuned. We got a lot to go over, a lot of tips and tricks to overcome some of the stress and anxiety and to be mindful in the moment. Live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. Well, I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking about guidance, health, and personal growth. Guidance for personal growth and health during this time of the year. How to create that personal awareness and that internal self-awareness. And it's interesting because internal self-awareness to me is like being able to identify values and aspirations, being able to understand how we feel, our behaviors, our thoughts, our feelings, that sort of thing. And it's interesting because when we have that self-awareness, that internal self-awareness, I believe that we just feel better. We have more satisfaction, we have more happiness, we have more joy. At the same time though, we can be, we have to also be externally self-aware, how other people view us, right? How other people see us, and then how we come off, like the comments we make, the statements we say, the things that we do, because a lot of times people don't. People might not understand. And I found that the more clearer we can be in our word, the better it can be, right? So it's like we, kind of having that connection and that opportunity to be introspective. And I really think that introspection is something that many of you do already, where you begin to challenge your own views, right? We challenge our own views based on our own blind spots. And we challenge those views, right? We challenge the views, we challenge that situation, we challenge the concept, we challenge how we feel about things, and we challenge our thoughts about people and situations. And I think that is self-awareness at the key, is that when we're able to challenge ourselves in the situation and what's happening right now, look at it from all different angles. And it's interesting because I found that oftentimes not everything is all horrible and not everything's all great. Sometimes getting that no is the best thing you could possibly get, right? Sometimes we're never taught that, though. As a kid, it's always about, you always want yes, 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 yes. But when we get the no, sometimes it could be the best thing that we could have ever gotten. It's something that we didn't realize at the time, but it's something that we did not need. And it was interesting in the last few weeks, I've been working with folks and things did not go the way that they had planned. And when we start looking at it from different angles, the best thing that could have happened was the situation that took place, right? And so I think that also many of us are seeking information. We're seeking things. And I think there's so much to be said about understanding kind of what makes us, what keeps us going, what are the things that we need to be doing in our life. So like really looking at the self-care, what are we doing to take care of ourselves and show ourselves that we matter? What are we doing to work on eliminating negativity in our life? Do we have folks around us that display toxic positivity more often than not, and maybe can gaslight you for, ever so often, with that positivity, that toxic positivity? And we've done a show on that. I guess it was a couple months ago, I think. And maybe George can put the link up for the social media for anybody that's watching on social media instead of listening to the radio. But we've been talking about that as well. And I think that right now more than ever, it's like really kind of looking at oneself in discovery mode, right? It's almost like you're in the laboratory and you're learning about yourself and you're categorizing things and you're understanding things and you're working to better understand you, getting a grasp on you and your identity and who you are and how you feel about certain things, which I think is extremely powerful. And it allows us to really kind of, get to know ourselves. I mean, we know a lot of people. You probably know many people in your life, and you know them pretty well, but do you really know yourself and what you really care about, what you value, what matters to you? And really start looking at that friend group. Who are the ones that really build you up? Who are the ones that you really connect with? Who are the ones that there's not a lot of meat, and there's not a lot of connection in? And why are you holding on to some of those relationships? And we need to really look at that. Are we doing any people pleasing? These are the things that we need to catch and start understanding and begin to work on so that we can not only safeguard ourselves, but create a happy, healthy, and joy-filled life. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about safeguarding ourselves, having that everyday guidance to really be mindful and super aware of the people that we're around. And a lot of times, when we're dealing with the holiday season, we might be around people that we're not always around all the time, and we might not be prepared for the situation. Many of us have also avoided maybe some people that we're going to be seeing during the season on its own. And we have to prepare ourselves for the possibility of interacting with them. We also have to prepare ourselves for dealing with different types of challenging people. And this is for every day. I mean, that's why it's like you can talk about it in this month, but you can really talk about this every day and twice on Sunday. It's just the truth. So, like, if you're dealing with, for example, people that might not be very empathic, maybe people that are really challenging, maybe people that question you, maybe people that don't see your value. I've been talking to some clients in the last week, and they're like really kind of overwhelmed because family's coming in, or they're having to go visit family, and they're dealing with the stressors and anxieties of that, and they're not really happy with being around certain people. They're very scared about being around certain people, and I understand it. I get it. And you don't want to open yourself up to certain people. You got to be very careful, because some people are really, they might like the fact that you're having a tough time in life. Also, maybe they might be gossipers. They want to gossip about your life, and you got to be careful about the stuff that you tell them. And you really want to think about that. I know that we all love good news, and we all love things that happen, like when you get that job and you're so happy about it, or you get engaged, or whatever's going on in your life, or you're pregnant, or whatever's going on in your life, whatever it is, whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you happy. There's some people that you can share that information with, and they're going to be happy, and they're going to be really healthy, happy with you. And there's some people that don't. And you have to ask yourself, is this information, should I give this information to this person? Are they deserving of knowing my personal life? And to what level and extent, right, do they deserve? And I know many of you are using gray rocking. You're using that technique where, you basically keep it surfacey and, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? How are your kids? How's the dog? And that's basically as far as it goes. And that's fine. And if that's how you feel, and that's the level of security that you have with some people, then you just got to go with it. I'm sure that there's some other people that you might feel better about. You might feel more content in talking about your life and the things that you have going on. But I really want you to look and prepare yourself and ask yourself, who are those people? And really analyze that. One of the things I've also found, too, is that sometimes we feel like we have to explain ourselves when you just don't. Okay, and that's an interesting thing too. And I think that the programming, and I have some videos coming out here soon, and I'm going to be doing an entire series on some things. But like the programming, for example, of the parental programming, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the child programming and the parental programming. I think this is very important. We have a thought process in our head of what parents are, what they do, what makes a good parent. And it's interesting growing up, and we were told to respect our parents, respect our elders, respect our parents, da-da-da-da-da. And it's interesting because what happens, though, let's say if a parent is not being a parent. Let's say that a parent instead is being mean, maybe aggressive, maybe narcissistic in nature, uncaring, says hateful things, right? If that's the case and you're dealing with that type of situation, we have to begin to understand the parental programming that's in our own mind. Because see, what's happening is we have like this disconnect. The parent's supposed to be this great person, but yet the parent's doing X, Y, Z. When the parent is doing this to us, it makes us feel bad. But then there has to be some reason why this is happening, because a parent wouldn't do that to their child that they care about. You see how the disconnect is? And so then it goes back to you're in pain and suffering because of a situation. Okay, get it? But it makes it even harder because you believe that this person's supposed to be on your side, right? Because they're your parent. And so it's like this, it's this juxtaposition of this happening and feeling this way, and then wondering why this is happening because this person's supposed to be in your corner, and they're not. And and the other concept is the child concept. Like, because we're a child and we're a child to these parents, the parent already has the concept that what we might be. So if you have a disconnect with the parent might not be listening to you because they say, why would I listen to you? You're my child. There's a 20-something year age gap. Why would I listen to what you have to say? On the other side too, as a child and as that programming, we might feel smaller than, lesser than, okay? And we might also go back into that childlike state when we're dealing with our family dynamic. And I've had a lot of people, literally in the last few years, and obviously last year was a really random last year. And a lot of people did not see their family last year. Okay. But like, you go back a year before that, and it was interesting because people would say right when they left the holiday situations, whatever was going on, they literally took days to get back to normal. They took days to get regulated. They took days to get back on solid ground. To feel themselves because they felt like such a child. They said walking back into the house and, the older brother seemed to be in charge of everything. Or maybe you had, one of your sisters or brothers might be the golden child and you're kind of considered the black sheep. And you kind of relive all these types of labels and programming throughout that 3 or 4 days that you're there. And some of you are lucky. You don't have to experience this at all. Okay. And that's awesome. And some of you experience this, but at a lesser degree, right? It might just be annoying or frustrating. And that's the thing too, is that if something is annoying or frustrating, I don't want you to look back at these times in life with just like, being apathetic or God, I can't believe I wasted that time. That's the thing, is that I want you to start making the best of it. We don't need to fall into the old programming traps, of being the child and kind of acquiescing to whatever is asked of us. And I think that happens a lot too, because we're used to it, or we don't want to rock the boat. And I'm definitely not saying that we need to all start a fight at the table during the holiday season, but I think there's certain things that you can accept and certain things that you can reject. And I really do think that when you find yourself falling into the old programming or using the old tools, because it's interesting. I had someone tell me the other day, they said that a couple of years back, like right when they walked in, they kind of felt like the mood change and they got quieter and they let their sisters and brothers talk all the time and they just kind of like yes and no and nodded their head and they said they kind of just went into like this other pseudo personality. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And we talked about, growing up and how they felt like they didn't have a voice and they didn't feel heard. And it seemed like everybody else in the family got heard and they were the ones that didn't get heard. And they kind of fall. You kind of fall back into those old patterns because it's very real. It's something that you live for 18 years more in the household, and then you go back into that same household with the same people, and you play the role out again. And so, what I'm asking you, I guess, to do is to start being mindful of those programs. Start being mindful of the programming that we have actually created in our own life. Right? Because a lot of the times it's not like it's beneficial to us. It's not like it's helpful to us. It's like we keep playing over and over again the same pattern, the same cycle, the same thing, expecting different results, but we're not really getting it. And that's the thing that I find challenging. And I feel like if we can start looking at that, so, think about it, go back to, and I don't want you to live in the past, but go back to the last time that you spent time with someone where you felt like you kind of went into your shell, or you went into kind of an old programming mode, or you got shy or quiet. And then look at that, because anytime that you get shy or quiet, that's an indication that you don't feel comfortable. Okay. That's an indication that something is not creating comfort in your life. That's an indication that something is off. And I want you to start analyzing that. I want you to start analyzing that, because a lot of times we sweep our feelings under the rug. We sweep our feelings under the rug. And that's the situation. And when we're doing that, we're not paying attention to our truth. We're not paying attention to how we truly feel. We're not paying attention to what we need to be doing in our life to safeguard ourselves. Now, sometimes I want you to pay attention when you're truly happy, when you're truly at peace. When are those situations? And what I've found is that the more that we can be in positions where we feel like we can be ourselves, the more we can break some of these program patterns that were created when we didn't feel like it. Because it was interesting. The other day I caught a programming pattern, a small one, but I was at a dinner and I started getting quiet around a couple of people, and it was interesting because I realized that I started kind of digging into it because, there was a conversation at the table, so I didn't have to talk. I really don't like talking all the time. I mean, I know you probably think I do because I talk all the time, but I don't always like to talk. I actually like to have some quietness in my life. And so when they were talking, it was great because I got to be introspective at the table, and I was like, what was that? What is this about? Why do I feel quiet around these people, these particular people? Why do I feel kind of almost meek? And I started thinking and I started realizing that, and it finally came to mind that, and it was interesting, and there's no judgment here, but I just realized that with both of these people in regards, everything that they said to me except for maybe one time, is all talk. None of it's real. All these plans and all these ideas and all these things just never come to fruition, and they're never followed through. And it's basically it's a dialogue that just never happens. And every time I'm around them, it's just kind of a letdown because I know that nothing's going to happen. We're not going to work on what we talked about working on. So I just stopped. And so what I found is I kind of got into like this little safe zone. But I realized I don't have to be that way. I don't have to act that way. And I realized that I did that, but it was a very big indication into my mind and into who I am, to be able to realize, okay, when I get quiet like this, what's the reason? And the reason for the situation was absolutely that. It was very interesting, and I realized that I just didn't have, I knew that this person wasn't going to follow through, hasn't done in the past, and so now I realized, so I didn't talk about things that I wanted to do with them. I didn't, when they would go down the rabbit hole of let's work on this or that, I listened, but I didn't add much to it because I know that it's just a waste of breath. But I also realized I didn't have to be meek, or I didn't have to be quiet. And I stood up for myself, and I didn't call anybody out, but I just didn't make any plans. And I stopped going down that program because sometimes we start playing out the roles with other people. So, for example, I could have just continued on, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to do that. That's great. When do you want to do that? Oh, okay, you're going to call me? Like they never call. Oh, yeah, okay, so you're going to call me? Okay, great. No, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to do that anymore. I mean, there's certain things that you can stop. And, and I think also, too, it's like, when we keep doing the same programming and getting the same results, it's tiring. It sucks. It's like when you walk in to say hi to everybody and during the holidays and you try to give everybody a hug, and there's that same relative that you say hi to and they give you the cold shoulder and they act really kind of nasty to you. If that's the case, why do we keep doing it? I mean, I understand that we do it because we want to, but do you do it because you want to, or you do it because you think you have to? At some point in time, you got to put your foot down. You don't have to be a jack butt to them when they come in the door, but you don't have to be overly nice. Hi, how's it going? Or you don't have to say anything. Because I've realized that when we start breaking these programs down and we start realizing it, we start to begin to feel more powerful. Okay? Because we don't have to keep doing the same thing and having that same person do the same thing. And sometimes it's good to see what other people do. Sometimes if you're the person that's very empathic and very giving and very caring, and you're constantly caring and giving, and you're feeling a little resentful, you might want to step back. And I'm not saying, oh, stop giving and stop caring. That's not what I'm saying here. But I say there comes a time when you have to just sit back and see, what are other people doing? How are other people dealing with this? How are other people treating you? And look at it for what it really is. And I'm not trying to get us all down here, because some of the people that you don't even realize that really care about you, you don't even realize it. And there's some analyzation, there's some thoughts, there's some awareness that has to be done right now to really see. Because there's some people that you walk into that room and you should probably say hi to them first. Think about that. Start thinking about what's the grouping. When you walk into a group of friends, who are you saying hi to first? And I'm not saying that it always has to be in order of like the people that you care about the most, but why not? People that have been there for you, gone out of their way for you, done things for you, been there for you, helped you in your life. Make a point. Make a point to be there for them first. And the greatest thing is that when you do that, they realize that you get it too. They realize you get it. And I give this example, and I know that for some of you this doesn't affect you, but for some of you it does. When you walk into that holiday event, think about it before you get there. Who deserves the first hi? Who deserves a hug? Who doesn't deserve a hug? Who deserves a big hug and a smile and a gift, and who doesn't? You don't have to do this just to make everybody happy, because remember, when it comes down to it, you got to go home. When it comes down to it, you got to feel good about what happened. And I'm not saying you got to feel good about it. I don't want you to feel any guilt or shame or resentment or anger. I want you to feel good about what you did going into that, showing exactly who you are and being who you need to be. Whether that's with family, whether that's with friends, whatever that looks like. Being truthful in how you feel. Now, I'm not talking about being rude and calling people out. But I'm saying, hey, if that's what you feel about somebody, probably not going up to them and trying to give them a big false hug is really the answer. Probably the answer is to say, hey, and kind of keep on moving, and probably not sit next to them, right? Because you go find the people that care about you and that you care about them, and you circle the wagons. Stay tuned. I'm going to be talking more about this and how to safeguard yourself and how to create a great time this year in a mindfulness, but also just to be true to yourself. That's all it's about, is about being true to ourselves. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking about concepts, programming, mindfulness, awareness, dealing with families during the holiday, dealing with challenging people, and knowing who to put first, to be quite honest with you. I've realized that. And the interesting thing, too, and I don't know if you've ever done this, many of you might have big families, and if you do, it's great. This is a great experiment to do. But one of the things that I've realized is that it's interesting when you show up at a big family event or at a big friend event, for example. Many of you might be, celebrating friends events. Okay? Who's the first one to come see you? Who's the first one to walk up to you? Who's the first person to walk outside to help you get your bag? Who's the first person that comes out? Who's the second person that comes out? Because sometimes we have a tendency of just thinking what we're doing all the time, but we don't really look at what other people are doing, and we don't really analyze what that means. And I'm not saying we got to super analyze everybody's actions, because that just is that's not good. Okay, we got to do other things in life than analyze other people's actions. However, it's interesting because I feel that if you start becoming aware of the people that have you on their hierarchy, and you don't have, it doesn't have to be the same, but what I'm saying is that might be an indication of who really feels comfortable with you, who really connects with you, who really feels for you, who really gets your plight, all that great stuff. Very powerful stuff. And I want you to start living that way too. I know that many of you don't want to rock the boat, and that's okay. And many of you don't want to burn bridges. That's okay. But some bridges have already been burned. There is no bridge left. It's just a big cave. There's nothing there. Okay? Don't worry about burning the bridge. The bridge was gone a long time ago, right? So there's some people out there that we just got to let it go. There's some people we just got to move on and keep on moving. There's some people we don't need to have the conversation. We don't need to sit there and talk about the BS. That's not going to matter anyway, because it's just BS. And I'm not saying that you walk in there and go, hey, yeah, get away from me. No, but you just limit the exposure. And this goes for family, friends, work colleagues. You know what I'm saying? Because what I've realized that is I would rather spend more time talking to people that have that really care about me than dealing with anybody that's a naysayer or a jerk or whatever that looks like. Because they don't deserve it. Why do we want to waste our time interacting with somebody like that when you can get to know other people that are genuine, nice people, healthy people, positive people for you to be around? And this is with everybody concerned. And I know that nowadays we have a tendency of getting sucked into the drama. We get sucked into this type of stuff. Try to avoid that, because that's deflection too. Because what happens is you get sucked into that. You get sucked into that, and it's hard to pull back. You get sucked into that, and it starts taking over your mindset, right? You're not being who you need to be in every single situation because you're too busy dealing with stuff that's just not even worth dealing with. And so I want you to think about this now, beginning today. Who are the people that you need to reach out to, that you haven't reached out to, that you need to say hi to, and you need to show them that you care? Who are some people that you're placating that you need to stop placating? Who are some people that you just need to eliminate from your life? Right? And I'm not saying you got to do it right now and make a big deal about it, but who do you need to start distancing yourself from? Because there's got to be some people. Because you need to have time to spend and cultivate relationships with the people that really do care, that you care about them and they care about you, and it's not a one-way street. These are the relationships that we need to cultivate. These are the things that we want to work on. And these are the things that when you are a highly sensitive person or you are an empath, it's great because guess what? You're fine. Person cares about you. You care about them. You can communicate. Communication is key. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for you every day of the year. And so really think about that. What are some things that we can do to be aware of who really cares about us? How do we really analyze that? How can we really connect with how we feel around people? How can we be more aware of, am I feeling quiet? Am I feeling meek? Am I feeling energized? Am I feeling powerful? Am I feeling like I have a voice in this relationship? Am I feeling like this person can hear me? Do I hear them? Do I listen to what they have to say? Do we communicate? This is powerful stuff. And if there's somebody that you're needing to open up the line of communication, try several times. And if it doesn't work, go on and move on. You tried. You won't have guilt or shame or anything from it as long as you tried your best, and then you can move on. I want you to have a great rest of your day, a great rest of the weekend. You can check out the podcast on AshleyBurgess.com, or you can go to Spreaker or YouTube, and I will be back next week, and I can't wait to see you here next week. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to live your true life and live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.